I've seen it.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, people. I hope you're all in position to hear me. I'm going to share my screen and we shall continue from where we stopped yesterday, and we'll be in position to finish up today.
Watch, are you talking? Oh.
Yes, sorry, I've been muted. I didn't even realize. Thank you, Simon. So I was saying that there are quite a number of joins that we have available under queries. And if we were to go over all the joins, we'd probably need a full week just to finish joins. However, I'll go over one more today, which is the full outer join, and then briefly talk about a couple of other extras and let you explore the rest of the joins that are available for use under queries. Right, so yesterday we had stopped on the right outer join. Today we're going to look at the full outer join. Basically, how the full outer join works is that it gets all values from the primary data table and all values from the secondary data table, including any which are not linked using the data item. So if they have a matching value, if there is a matching value in the primary table, but no matching value in the secondary table, it will show values from the primary table with a null value in the secondary table. If there is a value in the secondary table, but there is no value in the primary table, it will show all values in the secondary table, and it will provide null values for the primary table. If you remember yesterday, how we were doing our queries was that we would just come and change the join type here from the SQL join type property and change it. In this case, we're doing a full outer join. So I'll just change it to full outer join here for use and then go ahead, publish that. So as it publishes, another important thing to note about the full outer join is that in scenarios where the primary data set and the secondary data set both have values, it will show both of them as linked using the data item view. This time it won't be using the SQL join type to display data. It will use the data item link property. And that data item link property, in this case being a full outer join, it will segregate and show you all the data per the primary value and then move on to onto the next property. Okay, so I'm going to open up our PC. Okay, so I'll go to the payment vouchers. I don't know why this is a bit slow today, but I'll go to the payment vouchers. It's done. Okay, this is still publishing, but as that goes on, maybe I'll briefly talk about the rest and let you explore them. Another join that we have is the cross join, and the cross join works in a way that you will only pick values which are existing in both tables. It's kind of similar to the inner joins, which we started with at the beginning. But for the inner join, it works by picking values which are available and linked through the primary data table. For the cross join, it will look up as long as there is any corresponding link in the secondary table, which has a link as well in the primary table, it will show that up for you. So I'll just, okay, that has deployed. I'll just log in again so that we can see the full outer join and then move on to onto the next. Okay, so I'll just run this voucher query. And now you will notice that we have our values showing up for us based on all values which are existing on the payment vouchers. So regardless of, as I mentioned at the start, regardless of whether it finds a value in the primary table, it will show it. For example, all of these ones here, which have usernames, they have found their corresponding values in the primary table. And then even if it doesn't find any value in the primary table, you'll notice, for example, this first line that we have here, there is no value found for us in the primary table. However, it has still gone ahead and been able to show it up for us because it has found values in the secondary table. So that is your full outer join link. I'll let you explore. There are very many join examples, the inner, which we have not been in position to look at due to purposes of time, but I'll let you explore all of them. Right, I'll move on to the next section, which is filtering on query objects. And basically, how filtering on query objects works is that, as you're all aware, queries are available for us to use. But if you want to filter a particular query, you don't have to You don't have to consistently tie it to show all the data. You can filter out certain sections of how you want your data to be shown in the query. There are a couple of ways how we can filter. The first way how we can filter is we filter directly on the data item in the query object. And then the second way how we filter is we filter on the columns and on the rows in the query object. So we'll start off with filtering on the data items. So to do that, we have a property in the query object called data item filter. As I mentioned yesterday, when you've been in position to design reports in Business Central, some of the features that you use in queries are very similar. So we also have this data item filter property on our reports, but it's also a feature which is available on the queries. The data item filter property can be applied to any field which is existing in the table, not just fields which are represented in a column. I'll just show you that as an example here. So for this query here, under the payment voucher header table, you'll notice that I have set up data item table filter to filter for us on the payee type. And the payee type that I'm filtering to is the employee payee type. Now, this payee type here that I've filtered to, you'll notice, does not exist as a column within my referenced values under the data items. It only exists as a column within the payment voucher header table, but it doesn't exist as a column value within the data items. So the beautiful thing about the data item table filter is that regardless of whether it exists as a column in your query or not, you can use it as a filter. The next thing that is important to note is that it is static and it cannot be overwritten by the column filter properties or by the set filter or set range methods in AL code. So even before Business Central starts executing any other methods or any other properties, the first thing that it will do is filter based on your data item filter, and then it will go ahead and execute any other set ranges and set filters. So we're going to look at that on Business Central. I filtered based on the data item table filter as employee. And when I go and refresh this, sign in again, we should be able to see that the query is only going to show us payment vouchers where the payee type is employee. So I'm just going to run our payment vouchers page. And you'll notice that the page in Business Central shows us 10 records, right? With different payee types. We have vendor, impressed, bank, employee, vendor, and then employee again. So ideally, what if we were to execute our query, which we have designed, what we wanted to do is filter for us only those that are marked employee, right? So ideally, we should only be seeing these ones here, all right? So I'll go ahead and run the query. Just clear the filter here. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and run this query. And you'll notice that we are seeing only those which are marked off for us as employee, all right? So that is 617, 608, 609, and 616. Okay, so basically what our query has done for us is before even it goes ahead to execute anything else, it has filtered out for us only those which are marked off as employee, which are these ones here, 617, 608, 609, and 616. Okay, so that is how you do it. You specify the data item table filter and specify your filter that you require. I'm going to move on to the next, which is the column filter. And basically, how the column filter works is that we are able to apply a property called column filter property on the column that we've added. It's important to note that you can only use this column filter property for fields that are included in your data set. Okay? What that means is that if a field is not included in your data set for the query, then you cannot filter by that specific field. For example, here you'll notice that I've set up a column filter on the origin, and I want to filter by only payment vouchers that belong to UEGCL's headquarters. And I've marked it as HQ. So I cannot apply this column filter here, this property of column filter, on a field value which does not exist as a column here. Okay, so for example, I cannot go and specify column filter on the payee type. I can't specify column filter on the payee type because payee type is not mapped as a column value under our data set, under our data item for payment vouchers. Okay, I can only specify it for values which exist as column, which are these ones here. So if your field does not exist amongst any of these, you cannot use this property of column filter. The last thing to note about this is that it's dynamic and it can be overwritten at runtime by a call to the set filter or set range method. So what this means is that this runs as the last filter for you, and you can overwrite it. Okay, so if you do a set range, for example, you do a set range on your own before open query, or on the function which calls the query on the page, if you run a procedure on it, you can overwrite that. So I'm going to have that shown to us here. So I'll just sign out and sign in again. Okay, so if I now go to our payment vouchers, so we've removed the filter, the data item link filter here, sorry, the data item table filter here for employees. So we should be able to see all our different values for the different employees as well. But we've added a column filter for origin of headquarters. Now, by how we look at this, we should only be able to see 3 values on our query, because if we filter, we've specified that we only want to see payment vouchers which belong to head office. So these are the only ones which belong to head office, these 3, 603, 606, and 617. So when we run our query, we should only be able to get those three. So you'll notice we have 5 values, 5 lines, but one line is repeated 3 times. That is the line of 606. Okay, so we have payment voucher 617. We have payment voucher 606, which is repeated 3 times because we have 3 different lines on that specific payment voucher. And then we have our third payment voucher, which is 603. Okay, so you'll notice that these filters are important in such a way that you can customize your query in such a way that by the time you're outputting data to a user, the data is mapped to everything that is required by the user. Okay, you don't have to worry about specifying an immediate value and then having the user filter on their own. You can have that filtered for you as well. Right. So that is it for the filtering that is available for using queries. I'll move on to the next step, which is using queries instead of record variables. Okay, so we can use queries instead of record variables for running different values or different properties. The easiest way how this is done is on our reports. I will show us reporting is the last part of it. However, I'll touch on this before we see a practical example, because this interlinks with the last section. Instead of using a table or table item value when we are designing reports, usually when we're designing our reports, we'll design, we'll pick our data item as a table in and of itself, okay? And then we go ahead, get the values from the table, we write processing logic on the table, then design the RDLC and have it displayed to the user. However, that usually has challenges when it comes to picking data from multiple tables, because you'll have to do a link, and that link will then go and iterate through the different table values until it finds what it's looking for, then it shows it there. We're encouraged to use queries in such scenarios where we have large data sets. So usually, for example, an area which has large data sets can be, for example, the general ledger entries, the item ledger entries. If we are doing summations of payments, we can, or invoices, we can do that, the sales lines, purchase lines, etc. Right? So those data tables have extremely large data sets, and using query is encouraged by Microsoft for use rather than picking directly from the table. So we will look at this in detail when we go to designing the report. Let's actually look at it now, and then we'll come back to data aggregation so that we can finalize, so that we can have both of them at the end. Using a query to design a report, this links with what I've just mentioned for you, where you can use queries instead of record variables. In cases where you have large, extremely large data sets, you're encouraged to use a query property instead of using a record variable. So how do we do that? Instead of using the table dataset directly, we can use a query. And there are a couple of things that we must know when we are using a query to design a report. Now, this is not necessarily important that you follow all the steps. It's only required that you follow step 1, 2, and 3, and then step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you can customize your query, your report based on the query, however you want. However, there are some fundamental rules that we must follow when we are replacing a table, data item with a query data item. So how do we do that? I will just come here quickly to my report and attempt to create a new one. I'll just save this here as AL and call this query report 2 and attempt to save that. Okay. Right. So T report. Okay, so you'll notice here, if we do our T report, and I'll just give this an ID, so we have some sample data. Right, so you'll notice usually when we're designing our reports, all right, we'll come and pick directly from a table here. For example, we'll come and pick the payment voucher header table, and then we'll come fill in maybe the number. Maybe we'll come and fill in the origin as well, and maybe one last one will be the paying number here. Okay. So installing. And filter for us on payment. Okay, and then as we want to link this here, we'll come and specify data item and specify the payment voucher like, okay, which is very long and tedious. So you'll have to come and fill in. So let me just add the payment voucher line here, and then we'll come again and specify that it's linked using the data item link of the number, and then we'll come and specify the call here. We'll come and specify maybe the process quite fails. You're consistently adding here, all right? So you'll keep on adding all of these fields and specifying where they are required, and then you'll have to build your report and then add them on your layout. Okay. Now, this is a lot of time, all right? And as Microsoft mentions, it is not very convenient for data items or data sets that have a lot of data that require filtering. Okay. So what we will do is that we will, instead of doing all of this, we can use a query. One query which has all of this specified in it, and right, what we're going to do some you in our okay. How will that? We need to add more variables to the core object. After this variable, we'll use integer in the data addition, and because data is table, we cannot directly set it to a query. All right. Then we'll add the fields which we have got from our global variable, add our pre-data item, and on after get build, and then run it. Okay. So the last thing which I've mentioned is we'd need to add a global variable that points to the query object.
Watch.
Yes, please.
I don't know whether it is only me, but
yes, Emma.
The screen is not moving and you are somehow breaking. My screen is stuck.
I am data.
My screen is stuck on the query report.
What screen are you seeing?
Query report 2.aa.
Query report dot.
Maybe you can try sharing.
Okay, let me reshare. Okay, so Emma, I hope you're now in position to see my screen.
Still loading. I can see.
Okay, so I don't know where I lost you, but I was doing the normal way how we do our reports is we pick out the data item, which is a record variable. And then after picking out the data item, which is the record variable, in case there are other data items that we need to use, we come and specify them under the data item section and then add the required columns to that. So Microsoft lets us know that one, this is not very convenient for tables that have large data sets, as I mentioned before, like the ledger entry tables, or the lines tables where there's a lot of data that we have to filter through. So they encourage us to use the query, which is what I was showing before I stopped sharing. And the first thing that they tell us to do for the query is that you must add the query as a global variable. All right. So when you add that query as a global variable, we'll have it specified here as you're all knowledgeable. I hope we all know how to add global variables. So we'll specify that as the global variable and reference the query which we have created. The second thing that they tell us to do is to use the integer as the data item. Why? Why are we using the integer? Why can't we use the query directly? The reason why we are using the integer, I'm sure in your reports, in a lot of standard reports that you've seen, you sometimes will see them using integer in the data item, and then they can iterate through all the different values for the different tables that they have called. Why can't we use query directly? The reason we can't use query directly is because data items must always point to tables, and that is according to the Microsoft standard. So we have integer as a generic table, which from integer you can directly call any global variables that you have defined. Okay, so if I attempted to So I'm just going to comment out all of this and show you what happens if we try to directly call our query, okay? So if we try to directly call our query using the data item here, and we call the payment voucher query here, you'll notice we get an error message telling you table payment voucher query is missing. Much as we've defined this as a global variable, which is pointing to our query, the data item expects you to always reference a table. So it will not, regardless of however you name your global variable, it will not call it because it is a query, it is not a table. And the data item always expects you to have a table. So to avoid that, what they allow us to do is they allow you to call the integer data item, which is a generic table, all right? That can be used for anything. And then they allow you to specify your query in the columns. So that's query that we've specified in the columns is this payment voucher query, all right? And I've called the username, the number, origin, etc. here. So you'll notice that I am not breaking this down into the header, the payment voucher header. I'm not breaking it into the payment voucher lines. I just have one data item, which is the payment voucher query, where I've defined everything that I need. Okay, so I don't have to come and link using the data item table link sortable filters. I don't have to split into 10 or 20 data items if I have that. All I have is one query, and then I can call all the columns which I have in that query. The last thing which they tell us to do is to define triggers for our pre-data items and for our own after get reference. Why is this important? It's important, especially the pre-data item. The reason that it's important is because by default, queries do not run unless they are called, okay? Even if you specify the amount, the record values here, the query won't run until you explicitly tell it to run. That's the purpose of our pre-data item. So in our pre-data item, we're telling Business Central that before you do anything, run the query, all right? Using payment voucher query.open, okay? We're also telling it on our own after get record, if you've failed to read anything from the query, then don't show the report, break, all right? So these are, especially the pre-data item, is important for us to include because we need to tell Business Central by default, run this query before you even start generating the report. If you do not do that at all, then when you attempt to run the report will run, but the query will not execute, and as such, you'll fail to get data for use. So I'm going to go back to Business Central, and we run that report. Okay, so I'll sign in. The rest of the ways how you design the report are exactly the same. The RDLC layout, if you want to have RDLC layout, is the same. If you want to have a word layout, it's the same. So if you want to have other filters on your report, it's also the same. So those ones, I'm not going to show you how to do them because all of us here have designed reports before. So everything else is the same. So I'm going to run my payment voucher query report. Okay. And I'll just send this to Excel. You'll notice, first of all, that, sorry, payment voucher. report, you'll notice that our filter value here for us shows the integer. So I'll just send this to Excel. I don't have an RDL layout, but as you're all aware, we can export reports directly to Excel. So I'll open up this report. Okay, I had it already open. So I'll just close that and then open this again. Okay, now you'll notice that much as we have 10 payment vouchers, it has only showed us these ones here, which are 3. So because 606 is repeated 3 times because it has 3 lines, all right? Now, why is it only showing us these 3 values here? Sorry, these 3 payment vouchers instead of all the 10 payment vouchers? The reason it's doing that is because I mentioned to you already at the start when we were starting, is that you don't have to ask users to filter anything. You can filter for them on your query and show them data which is already fully filtered. You'll notice here, we have our column filter, all right? Our column filter here, which is showing us the origin of the payment voucher must be those from headquarters, all right? Because we are calling our query in our report, this filter is transferred directly to our report, okay? So you'll notice it's showing you only those where the origin is headquarters. So we're not picking any payment vouchers that are from Karuma, Isimba, etc. We're only picking those which are from headquarters. If you want to remove that, you can go ahead and remove it and publish, and you should be able to get that data. I'll move on to the last thing under queries. And the last thing under queries is data aggregation. Now, we had looked at this yesterday, but because of time, we weren't able to go very much in detail about it. And we do data aggregation using the method property. So the method property has 4 numerical method property types and 1 generic method property types. So some, yes.
Saying our time is up, maybe we can pack this for Friday and then hear from the team whether they have any questions regarding what you've presented.
Okay, that's fine.
SPK.
Okay. I think also on Friday, there can be any additional presenters because this is the last section that I was showing, and then we'll look at some sample questions.
Okay. Okay, let's pack the questions. Maybe Friday we shall just complete queries. SPK requested you to take over Lambert's section, which was design and create XML reports. So you prepare for next week. Then Kim, you didn't finish your section. I know you have a brand new computer. You should also be in position to pick it up the coming week. Yeah, maybe one thing I've taken note during Owachi's presentation, there are cases where we design reports that we are pulling information from multiple tables. What we normally do is that we get that data and put it in the staging table, and then we design a report picking from that staging table. And you've observed that some of these reports really take too much time to execute. So with queries, instead of you designing a staging table, you can design your query, pick that information from your multiple tables, put it into a query, and then make your report look through that query. So that is something that I think can be utilized moving forward. Yeah, so if there are no any queries or comments, I'll request that maybe we stop here and we plan for Friday. Thank you very much for that presentation. Thanks everyone for joining. I observe that majority of us joined late, so I request you that you improve on Friday. I forgot, I observed that also the meeting link expired. I'd set, I think, for March. I'm going to set another one for this month so that you can be reminded. Yeah, thank you and have a great day ahead.